kickstart the show then by putting the spotlight on Skyroot Aerospace. The company has actually been the startup that's behind the first private space launch, as well as it has actually test-fired a 3D printed engine. Let's connect then with Bharath Daka, who's the co-founder and COO at Skyroot Aerospace. Thanks so much for joining in. Bharath, so much to talk about because along with ISRO, you've actually enabled a successful rocket engine test. Just tell us a little bit more about how that went off and what your contribution was as Skyroot.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. The test we have done recently is a Raman 2, it's called Raman 2 engine, which we use in our upper stage of our rocket in making. So this test has proven our hardware capability, and like the textbook performance which we were able to achieve was very encouraging. So this test, we were IPRC, the ISRO Center for the ISRO Propulsion Center, has enabled this test with the help of InSpace. So this has proven our capability and also has helped us learn the rigorous testing mechanism that goes into the testing the engine in the test facility of ISRO. Has given us additional confidence because we have been testing our engine. The previous version of this engine has been tested in our own facilities before, but the final version being able to test in the ISRO facility with their presence, and also they've been able to look at the performance of our engine. So this gives us confidence for our run up to our first launch, which we are targeting towards the end of this year.
And you guys are really at the forefront of cutting-edge technologies, 3D printing and green propellants. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so 3D printing actually enables rapid iteration of any design. So 3D printing of rocket engines has been into adoption in the past decade, and we've been able to demonstrate that capability not just with the storable liquid engine which we have tested recently. We've even built a fully 3D printed cryogenic engine and have successfully tested that also. It's called the one, even that we have tested recently. So 3D printing of rocket engine requires a design capability for 3D printing, and it enables us to do rapid iterations. What traditionally takes close to a year through conventional manufacturing can be realized just in 2 weeks. And if there is any improvement we need to do, also we can simply do it again in 2 weeks without even going through the long cycle of conventional manufacturing. That is the immense advantage that 3D printing brings to the table. And even in production, like all the liquid engines in our vehicle will be fully 3D printed going forward.
Okay, and I understand that one of the key USPs and what really makes Skyroot stand out is the fact that you're looking at the ability of, the first private space launch that will be at half the cost of the established launch companies. How exactly are you making that feasible?
So India, as such, has a well-known advantage. India is well known as a spacefaring nation and the proven capability of executing space missions at fraction of cost of the Western counterparts. So that India cost advantage naturally translate to even the private entities like us operating commercial launch vehicles out of India. So once we become operational, due to the natural cost advantage of efficient operations and the manpower and the technological architecture we choose for our vehicle, this helps us to be able to execute and operationalize a launch vehicle, which will be significantly cost effective compared to the Western counterparts of similar launch vehicle sizes.
Okay, and Bharath, I also understand that Skyroot has signed an agreement with a French new space operator, Promethy. Can you tell us a little bit more about this tie-up and whether or not there are any more that you're looking at? This is for a satellite constellation?
Yes, it did. So, recently we've been fortunate to accompany Prime Minister or co-founder Pavan has accompanied Prime Minister in the CEO delegation from India. So, in the sidelines of that Indo-French event and in their we have made some deals with the one of the prominent one is the Promethy one. It's an Earth observation satellite constellation who are exploring to launch their satellite constellation with our launch vehicle in the future once they become operational.
Okay. Let's also understand, a little bit more about some of your investors, because you've got the marquee Singapore Sovereign Wealth Fund, GIC, that has backed the company. What has been the total fundraise that you have undertaken, and are you exploring any more fundraisers at the current juncture?
Cumulatively, we have raised funding of around 68 million, and yes, indeed, in the last year, August, we have raised 50 million capital, significant chunk of it, which is primarily led by GGAC. And we have been fortunate to be to gain our both for our early stage investors and also to the late stage investors who have built trust on us, and we've been able to execute that. And with this current fund, to go till the first launch and even beyond that. And and as time progresses, we will be open to exploring new fundraisers in the future. But currently, all focus is towards getting to our first launch. Yeah.
Okay. Let's also get in a sense as to what the outlook is. When it comes to the kind of support that we've seen from the government as well, the fact that there has been a lot of thrust from the government to really push the global space launch market quite significantly. How much confidence does this inspire, and does this really help propel your further growth ambitions?
Indeed. 2020 is the transformative year for Indian space sector when Honorable Prime Minister Modi has announced the space reforms, and it has culminated in formation of InSpace, a space regulatory and promotion body. And within 6 months from formation of InSpace, we've been able to achieve the first private launch from India on November 2022, for which even all the regulatory aspects that the InSpace has worked hand in hand, and there was absolutely zero delay due to the regulatory aspects for our first launch. And now all the regulatory framework for commercial private companies to operate in India, not just launch vehicles, satellites, everything has been established, and it's going to get even more formalized as we go further. This gives immense confidence, not just for the space entrepreneurs, but also space investor community, that the regulatory landscape is not only certain, but also moving forward progressively in a fast-paced manner than any country that has implemented these space reforms. That way, the vision of the Indian government to accelerate space reforms and to enable private space players to play a major role in the space economy of the future is going to become a reality very soon in this decade.
So is it true that you can actually build a new rocket in 2 days as you're working, towards that plan? You had spoken about this in the past, towards reusable rockets, and that, of course, was a technology that had been pioneered by SpaceX.
Yeah, so there are two separate things here. So addressing your first query of building a rocket in 2 years, it is essentially it's not building a rocket, it's making a rocket ready in 2 days. Basically, generally in rocketry, the final launch readiness aspects are going to generally take a long time if we don't plan the vehicle architecture and the systems properly. So here our approach is with a very modular architecture, we can assemble and do the final phase of checks and integrated checks. And those activities, what we are going to compress in a way that we can, at a rapid iteration, we can assemble and launch in like 48 to 72 hours timeline. So that is the key advantage of that is we can the ability to rapidly launch a launch vehicle from a given launch pad will be attained. And of course, to come towards your second thing, the reusable launch vehicle technology. Our first vehicle is not a reusable launch vehicle; it's an expendable launch vehicle. Generally, in small satellite launch vehicles, the most of the small satellite launch vehicles will be expendable launch vehicles. the economics of reusability doesn't play around well with the smaller launch vehicle. And the future of rocketry is indeed the reusable launch vehicles. As you rightly mentioned, SpaceX has pioneered this capability of reusing the first stage, and in future, in the coming decade, multiple all spacefaring nations will have the reusable launch vehicle capability, and India also will go that path. And Skyroot will be more than willing to participate in that endeavor to build a big, rapidly reusable launch vehicle in India.
So how does the competitive intensity stack up? Because there are a lot of established players, for instance, Richard Branson's Virgin Orbit, you've got Rocket Lab in the US, in China as well. There have been some pretty successful companies, at least, looking at the overall global landscape. Where does Skyroot currently stand?
So, globally, there are multiple companies in the developmental phases. Currently, the only two operational private launch companies are SpaceX and Rocket Lab, and there are multiple counterparts who are in the US, European sector, who are developing the launch vehicles in our phase. But our key advantage will still remain, our India advantage, our cost effectiveness advantage will still remain once we become operational. And we will be able to provide cost-effective, hence affordable, reliable launch solutions from India to the world once we become operational. These are confidence.
All right, good to have you on board. Thanks so much then, Bharath, for joining in and sharing with us the ambitions for Skyroot, and all the very best with all that breaking edge technology and new age technology that the company is adopting.
Thank you.